She filmed the place herself. Weeks before she vanished, Lynette Hooker pointed her camera at an abandoned, hurricane-destroyed marina that almost nobody on Earth knew existed. She walked through every broken corner of it. She showed the world every ruined wall, every collapsed dock, every crumbling pathway. She had no idea that footage would one day become part of a criminal investigation. She had no idea that the place she filmed would one day be searched by people looking for her body. She had no idea that the man standing right beside her in those photographs, arms spread wide on the rocky shoreline, smiling in the Bahamian sun, would one day be named as a suspect in her disappearance. This is the story of Lynette Hooker, and it does not begin on the night she vanished. It begins at a ruined marina that almost no one on Earth knew existed, until Lynette pointed her camera at it. Subscribe to Global Crime Files right now and turn on notifications before we go any further. Every time verified information surfaces in this case, we cover it here with one standard: evidence first, conclusions only when the record supports them. Hit subscribe. This case is moving. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old. She was from Onstead, Michigan. After 25 years of marriage, she and her husband Brian made the decision that most people only dream about. They sold the house, they sold the car, they got rid of everything they owned. They bought a 45-foot catamaran called the Soulmate, and they left the conventional world behind to live full-time on the water. That kind of life takes a specific kind of person, someone genuinely comfortable with uncertainty, with physical demand, with the constant reality of being at sea. Lynette was that person. Her mother, Darlene Hamlet, told the Associated Press that Lynette had been around lakes, boats, sailing, and swimming her entire life. Her daughter, Carly, confirmed to CBS News that Lynette was physically strong, fit, and a capable swimmer. These details matter, and we will come back to them. The Hookers documented their life with consistency and creativity. The Sailing Hookers Instagram account showed the life people fantasize about: sea turtles, sunsets, cinnamon rolls from the solar oven, snorkeling over coral, paddleboarding across glassy bays, and sometimes places off the beaten path, places that took real curiosity to find. Lynette had a 360 camera, the kind where the selfie stick disappears from the footage and the result looks like a disembodied eye floating through space. She used it everywhere, every excursion, every discovery. She pointed it at the world, and the world came back in full detail. That habit of documentation is now one of the most important elements of the investigation into her disappearance. The Hookers were moored in Marsh Harbor on Great Abaco Island during the weeks leading up to April 4th. Marsh Harbor is the largest town in the Abaco chain, a working harbor with provisioning, restaurants, and a community of live-aboard sailors cycling through. Brian and Lynette were on a mooring ball in the protected inlet that faces west, close to Snapper's Bar and Grill, close to the Conch Inn, using the marina facilities regularly. This was their home base, the center of gravity for their life in the Bahamas during this period. From that mooring ball, traveling north along the coast, approximately 10 minutes by paddleboard, you reach Mermaid Reef. And at Mermaid Reef is where Snapper Point Marina used to stand. Before we go further, you need to understand what Hurricane Dorian did to these islands, because without that, you cannot understand what Snapper Point Marina is today and why it matters. Dorian made landfall on Great Abaco Island on August 31, 2019, as a Category 5 hurricane, the strongest ever to strike the Bahamas. 185-mile-per-hour winds, gusts of 220, a storm surge of 23 feet. These are flat, low-lying islands. There is no high ground. A 23-foot wall of water does not leave things standing. The Abacos were devastated. Elbow Cay, Marsh Harbor, Hopetown, all the places central to this investigation, they were hammered. Some communities were nearly erased entirely. Snapper Point Marina was one of the casualties. Before Dorian, it was genuinely beautiful. Aerial photographs show a stunning protected waterway, white sand beaches, palm trees, covered dockage for yachts up to 90 feet, guest houses, a pool with decorative tiles overlooking the Sea of Abaco. After Dorian, gone. Wrecked docks, collapsed buildings, a pool stripped of its tiles, pathways buried under debris, buildings reduced to hollow shells, the kind of destruction that, if you did not know the timeline, you might assume happened decades ago rather than in a single night 7 years back. And here is the detail that changes everything. Almost nobody goes there anymore. Not locals, not tourists, not sailors anchored in Marsh Harbor. Nobody. There is nothing to attract anyone to Snapper Point Marina. It is not in any cruising guide. It is not on any travel blog. It is an abandoned ruin in an area that offers nothing. The beach is there, but there are beautiful beaches everywhere in the Bahamas that do not require navigating hurricane debris to reach. Ashley Banfield of the Drop Dead Serious podcast confirmed this directly on her May 1st episode. She spent weeks, not days, weeks, trying to identify the location from Lynette's photographs and video. She sent pictures to locals, to fire and rescue personnel, to everyone she had developed as a source throughout the investigation, people who knew that coastline by feel. And the answer came back the same every time. Never heard of it. Cannot place it. Do not know what that is. Nobody goes there. That phrase kept surfacing. Nobody goes there. And yet Brian and Lynette had been there. They explored it together with their daughter Carly. When you look at the social media documentation from that excursion, Brian is in those photographs, standing on the rocky outcroppings in front of the beach, arms spread wide, the way you stand in a place that feels expansive and strangely beautiful, even in its ruin. Carly is there too. The three of them walked through the whole place together. The broken docks, the ruined pool, the collapsed pathways, the buildings Dorian had gutted, and Lynette documented all of it with the 360 camera. The footage includes the bowed stone pathway that used to lead to the resort's main dining room, now a gutted structure with no windows. It includes the pool, the beach, the docks, and in one brief frame, the camera pans past a sign, Snapper Point Marina. That single frame is what took Ashley Banfield weeks to find. Once she had the name, she could find the location on a map. She could find the old website. She could find the pre-Dorian photographs that confirmed beyond any question that the bowed walkway in Lynette's footage is the same bowed walkway from the resort's promotional photography, just destroyed. Location confirmed. Geography now fully in play. And the geography is everything. The Soulmate was moored in Marsh Harbor. From that mooring ball, north along the coast, 10 minutes by paddleboard, you reach Snapper Point Marina. The Soulmate had paddleboards. New York Post photographs of the vessel at anchor show 2 paddleboards strapped to the deck. Ashley Banfield described the trip to Snapper Point as exactly the kind of excursion you would do from that mooring ball on a quiet afternoon. Brian knew this location. He had walked its terrain. He knew where the sandy beach was, the kind of beach where a small boat can come ashore cleanly even in the dark without damaging the engine or the hull. He knew the ruined buildings. He knew the broken docks. He knew the isolated, abandoned, completely unmonitored nature of a place that nobody visits because nobody has any reason to go there. Now hold that alongside what we know about the night of April 4th. According to Brian Hooker's own account, as reported by ABC News, NBC News, and multiple additional confirmed outlets, the evening began around 7:30 when Brian and Lynette departed the Abaco Inn dock at Elbow Cay to return to the Soulmate. Brian told investigators they had been drinking at the bar. He stated that Lynette, who he described as having consumed a significant amount of alcohol, was sitting on the bow trampoline of the dinghy as they motored back through the dark. He stated the dinghy hit a wave. Lynette fell overboard, and despite his attempts, he could not locate her in the darkness. What followed, according to Brian, was approximately 9 hours during which he searched. He drove in circles. He anchored and yelled into the dark. He tried everything. At 4 o'clock in the morning on April 5th, he arrived at the Marsh Harbor Boatyard. The Marsh Harbor Boatyard is in Marsh Harbor, just south of where Snapper Point Marina stands. The same harbor, the same stretch of coast, 9 hours. In waters that include, within 10 minutes of travel, a completely isolated and abandoned marina that he had personally explored in detail. A place with a sandy, accessible beach. A place that nobody monitors. A place that nobody visits. A place that nobody would have any reason to approach on that night or any night. Brian did not call for help immediately upon arriving at the boatyard. According to reporting by the Washington Examiner and confirmed by multiple sources, there was a gap between his arrival and the first emergency contact. The details of that gap have been a consistent focus of investigative attention. Royal Bahamas Police Force Commissioner Clayton Fernander confirmed to NBC News that Brian Hooker remains a named suspect. He has not been cleared. He can be rearrested. That is the official position of the highest law enforcement authority in the Bahamas as of the most recent public confirmation. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. His attorney, Terrell Butler, stated he categorically and unequivocally denies all wrongdoing. His Michigan-based attorney, Crystal Marie Hauer, told ABC News that Brian never would have harmed his wife of 25 years. Brian himself stated publicly that he never harmed Lynette, never would, and that finding her remains his only focus. We present those statements completely and without editorial commentary, because that is what this channel does. We do not decide guilt. We follow the documented record. And the documented record raises questions that have not been answered. If you are still watching, subscribe right now. This is exactly the kind of case that develops fast and without warning. Turn on notifications so you are here when it breaks. Investigators seized devices from the Soulmate under a search warrant that CBS News reviewed. A digital video recorder, digital tablets, and cell phone-related equipment described as material evidence. Those devices contain GPS data, location history, communication logs, and the full electronic footprint of every movement Brian made in the Bahamas. That evidence is in the hands of investigators. What it shows has not been made public. What has been made public is that Brian Hooker is technically sophisticated. Blaine Stevenson, confirmed by Ashley Banfield as a source with direct knowledge, stated that Brian knows more about maritime electronics and boat technology than most people sailing those waters. He wired the Soulmate's solar system himself. Lynette posted publicly about him absorbed in the boat's technical systems for hours. He is someone who understands exactly how tracking technology works and how digital records are generated. He is also, by documented record, someone who has previously been found to have manipulated records related to his own location. His termination from AT&T, confirmed publicly by the company and reported by multiple outlets, involved findings that he had altered records to misrepresent his whereabouts while on the job. We present that as documented context, not as proof of anything in this investigation, as context about the individual whose digital record investigators are now examining in detail. Carly Hooker flew to the Bahamas after her mother disappeared. She walked the shorelines. She stood at the spot where Brian told investigators her mother went overboard. She looked at the distance to shore. She told Wood TV that her mother could have swum 2 feet to reach land. She said the story sounds more sketchy to her now than it did before she arrived. She flew home wearing the L necklace, the small charm Lynette always wore around her neck. Darlene Hamlet is 76 years old and she is waiting. She told Ashley Banfield she wants nothing more than to know her daughter loved her and wished she had come home. The search that followed Lynette's disappearance was among the most extensive in the region's recent history. Air assets, marine assets, dive teams, cadaver dogs working shoreline areas, 30 days of professional searching. And as of April 29th, confirmed by Crime Online citing sources familiar with the investigation, the search transitioned from water to land. That one word represents a shift in investigative theory, a conclusion, however tentative, that the answer may not be at the bottom of the Sea of Abaco, but on its shores. Snapper Point Marina is on land, right at the edge where water meets land, accessible from the sea. Sandy beach, no monitors, no foot traffic, no witnesses, a place that a dinghy can reach in the dark without difficulty, a terrain that Brian knew in detail, and that almost no one else on those islands could even locate on a map. Ashley Banfield stated clearly on her May 1st podcast that she is not suggesting Brian did anything. She stated clearly he has not been charged. What she is doing is what good investigative journalism does, identifying locations with relevant geography that law enforcement may or may not already be aware of and examining them against the public record. That is what this channel does as well. The factual record shows Lynette filmed Snapper Point Marina. Brian was there with her. The location is 10 minutes from where the Soulmate was moored. The location is completely isolated. The location sits in direct geographic relationship to where Brian says he ended up during those 9 hours. Lynette's body has not been found after 30 days of professional searching by air, sea, and land. Those are documented facts. We are not connecting them into a conclusion. Investigators do that, based on evidence that has not been made public. There is something worth sitting with in all of this. Lynette found that place the way she found everything, by being curious, by paddling towards something unfamiliar instead of away from it, by pointing her camera at what she discovered because she believed the world was worth seeing. The people who know that coastline, the fire and rescue workers, the longtime locals, the experienced sailors, they did not recognize Snapper Point Marina from her photographs. Most of them had never heard of it. It took a journalist weeks of dedicated frame-by-frame analysis of Lynette's own footage to find it. Brian knew. He had been there. He stood on those rocky outcroppings with his arms spread wide. He walked through every corner of that place. He knew exactly where the sandy beach was and how accessible it was from the water. There is one more detail Ashley Banfield noted from the photographs of Brian at Snapper Point Marina. He is wearing reef walker shoes. Shoes specifically designed for navigating shallow water and rocky shoreline terrain. Shoes you wear when you know you are moving through the kind of environment that exists at the waterline of a destroyed Bahamian marina. Ashley was explicit that this is consistent with a completely normal day trip for a live-aboard sailor. She is not suggesting it is evidence of wrongdoing. She is noting it because it is in the documented photographic record of a visit to a location that now has investigative relevance. The public should know what the record contains. The U.S. Coast Guard criminal investigation remains open. The Royal Bahamas Police Force investigation remains active. The search is on land. And a ruined marina that nobody visits sits precisely where the documented geography of this case demands attention. If you have any information about the disappearance of Lynette Hooker, Contact the Royal Bahamas Police Force or the United States Coast Guard. Tips can be submitted anonymously through the CGIS Tips application on any mobile phone. You can also reach Ashley Banfield at dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. She shares everything she receives with investigators. Lynette Hooker was a woman who loved the sea and trusted the life she had built, who found wonder in ruined places and documented everything she encountered because she believed the world deserved to be seen. The footage from her own camera is now part of the investigation into where she might be. She found the place. She filmed it. She showed it to the world. She just did not know what she was showing. Her mother is 76 and waiting. Her daughter came home wearing her necklace, and Lynette has not been found. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. All individuals referenced are presumed innocent unless formally charged and convicted in a court of law. This is not just a story. It is a real life, a real family, a real woman who deserves the truth. This is Global Crime Files. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. We will be here when this breaks. The search continues. Let us go deeper into what the geography of that night actually means, because geography is the frame inside which every piece of this evidence must be understood. Elbow Cay, where Brian says the incident occurred, sits on the outer edge of the Abaco chain. It is home to Hopetown, probably the most photographed village in the Bahamas, the candy-striped lighthouse, the perfect colonial harbor. The Abaco Inn, where Brian and Lynette had dinner and drinks that night, sits on the Atlantic side of Elbow Cay, a short walk across the narrow island from the harbor. It faces the open ocean. The channel between Elbow Cay and the Abaco mainland is a navigable waterway that local vessels and charter boats use regularly. It is not the open ocean. It is a sheltered passage. Lynette Hooker was, by every account from people who knew her, a strong and experienced swimmer. Her mother described a lifetime of experience around water. Her daughter stood at the spot where Brian says it happened and said her mother could have swum 2 feet to shore. The idea that a strong, experienced swimmer would simply disappear in a relatively protected channel under normal conditions without reaching any shore, without being seen by any vessel or any resident in the area, is something that experienced maritime investigators find very difficult to account for through accident alone. That difficulty is why the investigation remains open. That difficulty is why Brian Hooker remains a named suspect who has not been cleared. That difficulty is why the search has moved from water to land. And that difficulty is why Snapper Point Marina, a place Lynette herself documented and Brian personally explored, now sits at the center of the geographic analysis of this case. The Abacos are not a large territory. The Sea of Abaco is a contained body of water. A 30-day search by professional assets, air, sea, and land, covering those waters and those shorelines without finding a trace, tells investigators something. It tells them that either the body is in a location the search has not covered, or it tells them that the body may not be in the water at all. Both conclusions point in the same direction, toward land, toward shoreline, toward isolated, unmonitored places that a small vessel can reach in the dark. There are not many places like that in the northern Abacos, but Snapper Point Marina is one of them. Ashley Banfield spent weeks on this. She followed Lynette's social media frame by frame. She sent photographs to everyone she knew on those islands. She got back the same answer over and over. Nobody knows this place. Nobody goes there. And then she found the sign in one frame of Lynette's footage, and everything that had been geographically abstract suddenly became geographically specific. A name, a location, a place on a map that sits exactly where the timeline of April 4th demands attention. She shared that information publicly. She said explicitly she shares everything with investigators. Whether the Coast Guard or the Royal Bahamas Police Force had already identified Snapper Point Marina as a location of interest before that public disclosure has not been confirmed. What is confirmed is that the information is now in the public record, that both investigations remain active, and that the search is on land. Consider what a land-based search means in practical terms. Cadaver dogs, grid searches of terrain, examination of structures, of dense vegetation, of areas accessible from the water that a surface search would not cover. The ruins of Snapper Point Marina are exactly the kind of terrain that a land-based search phase would need to include. Collapsed buildings with debris, dense vegetation grown over hurricane wreckage, a beach accessible by small boat, areas that have not been disturbed in years because nobody goes there. Investigators who work maritime criminal cases understand something that casual observers sometimes miss. The water is not always where the answer is. The water is where the event may have occurred. But the answer, the physical evidence, the remains, those can be moved. A person with knowledge of isolated terrain, with access to a small vessel, with 9 hours of unaccounted time in the dark, in waters that include an abandoned location he had personally explored, had options that a casual reconstruction of events does not account for. We are not saying that is what happened. We are saying that is the investigative framework that the documented record creates. And that framework places Snapper Point Marina at its center. The devices seized from the Soulmate are the key that investigators hold. A digital video recorder, tablets, cell phones, GPS history, location data, communication records, the full digital footprint of a technically sophisticated man who understood exactly how those systems worked and who had a documented prior history of attempting to manipulate his own digital location records. Whatever those devices show, investigators have it. Whatever those devices reveal about where that dinghy went during 9 hours on April 4th, the Coast Guard Investigative Service and the Royal Bahamas Police Force know. We do not. Not yet. What we know is what the public record contains. And the public record, assembled carefully and sourced to confirmed reporting, tells a story that does not resolve itself through the explanation that has been offered. A strong swimmer in a protected channel under normal conditions, not found in 30 days of professional searching, in a case where the surviving witness is a named suspect with a documented history of record manipulation, in a geography that includes an isolated, abandoned location he knew in detail and nobody else could locate. The record does not answer the question. The record makes the question impossible to set aside. Lynette Hooker pointed her camera at the world for years. She showed her followers everything, the beautiful and the broken, the expected and the unexpected. She found Snapper Point Marina the way she found everything, by looking, by paddling toward the unknown, by believing that places nobody else bothered to see were worth seeing. She showed it to the world without knowing that someday the world would look back at that footage searching for her. Her name is Lynette Hooker. She is from Onstead, Michigan. She was 55 years old. She loved the sea. She trusted the life she had built, and she is missing. The truth is out there. The investigation continues, and we will be here when it surfaces. Subscribe to Global Crime Files. Turn on notifications. Share this with anyone who cares about finding what happened to Lynette Hooker. The more people watching, the more pressure on this investigation to produce answers. Her family deserves those answers. The truth deserves to be found. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. His attorneys state he categorically and unequivocally denies any wrongdoing. All individuals referenced in this video are presumed innocent unless formally charged and convicted in a court of law. Contact the Royal Bahamas Police Force or the United States Coast Guard if you have information. Anonymous tips through the CGIS Tips application on any mobile phone. Or reach Ashley Banfield directly at dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. This is Global Crime Files. Every victim deserves the truth. Every story deserves to be told with the discipline and the care it requires. The case is open. The search goes on. We will be here. There is something that deserves to be said directly about what investigative journalism does and why it matters in a case like this. Ashley Banfield did not stumble onto Snapper Point Marina. She worked for it. She spent weeks going through social media footage frame by frame, the kind of painstaking, methodical work that produces results not through intuition but through effort. She sent photographs to dozens of people. She got back dead ends until she did not. And when she found the sign, she understood immediately what she had: a location, a name, a place on a map that nobody had publicly identified before, sitting in a geographic relationship with the events of April 4th that cannot be ignored. That is what this channel does as well. Not guesswork, not speculation that outruns the record. The documented facts, assembled with care, sourced to confirmed reporting, presented to a public that has the right to understand what the record actually says. Lynette Hooker's case has attracted significant public attention. That attention creates pressure on investigators. That pressure is appropriate. A named suspect who has not been cleared, a body not found, a search moved to land, and a ruined marina that the suspect personally explored, sitting precisely where the geography demands examination. Public attention on those facts is not interference. It is accountability. The Hooker family is living with an absence that has no explanation they have been able to accept. Carly stood at the spot where her father says her mother fell overboard. She assessed the distance to shore with her own eyes. She said the story sounds more sketchy now than before she went. She came home wearing her mother's necklace. That necklace is not an abstraction. It is the physical reality of a daughter carrying her missing mother with her because she has nothing else to carry home. Darlene Hamlet is 76 years old. She has outlived the version of the world in which her daughter was still coming home. She told Ashley Banfield she wants nothing more than to hear her daughter say she loves her. That statement should anchor every piece of analysis in this case. Not the geography, not the timeline, not the devices or the digital records or the investigative frameworks. A 76-year-old mother waiting. That is what this is about. Lynette Hooker loved the sea. She loved finding the places that others passed by without stopping. She loved pointing her camera at the world and showing people what was there. Abandoned marinas, ruined pools, bowed stone pathways leading to buildings that used to be beautiful. She found the strangeness and the sadness and the unexpected wonder in corners of the world that most people never bother to look at. That quality, that curiosity, that compulsion to document and share is what led her to Snapper Point Marina on a quiet afternoon before April 4th. And it is that same footage, those same frames from that same camera, that now sit at the center of the most significant geographic development in the public investigation of her disappearance. She found the place. She showed it to us. She just did not know that is what she was doing. Global Crime Files will continue to follow this case as long as Lynette Hooker remains missing and the truth remains unfound. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Be here when this breaks. Every victim deserves the truth. Every family deserves answers. And every case like this deserves the sustained attention of people who will not look away until the record is complete. The search for truth continues.